Good afternoon, producer Susan. How you doing after your week off?
I'm doing all right, hanging in there.
You hanging? So did you go any place exciting? You took a week off,
I went to my bed.
went to your bed. So you went and got COVID just because so you wouldn't have to do a podcast. That's a pretty lame excuse to get
Yep. I, I lasted 4 whole years.
4 whole years without COVID, and then you finally came down with COVID. But you're all recovered. So you're out of what? It took you what Monday through Sunday to basically get over it.
Oh, yeah, I'm still, lingering effects.
Lingering effects, but the worst of it is you got over the hump though after 5 or 6 days, right?
Oh,
Right. Do you remember how to do this?
I'll try.
All right. Anyway, so today's January 23rd. Today it's this is the situation with Jerzee Joe. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. And today I've got a lot of stuff you haven't heard on TV. So it's just amazing what the network decides not to report on. Um, our quote of the week is from author C.S. Lewis. You ever heard of C.S. Lewis? He's deceased now, but he was a pretty famous author in his day.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, and his quote is on the most cowardly thing that a lot of ordinary people do all the time. In one of the many stories you didn't hear on the news, we'll tell you about a California sheriff who was caught accepting bribes in exchange for issuing more than a dozen concealed weapon carry permits. Because this was in California, where the sheriffs would routinely deny people's requests for concealed carry. And this particular sheriff said, "Yeah, you want to donate 90,000 to my reelection campaign? Yeah, you can have a dozen concealed carry permits." We'll tell you all about that. In another story you may not have heard about on TV, we'll tell you about a Nigerian immigrant who used an illegal handgun to commit a mass murder in Illinois. We'll tell you why Mexico is suing U.S. gun manufacturers and the surprising decision by a federal appeals court on the status of that case. And yet another story you didn't hear in the news, we'll tell you about more than 100 encrypted emails from the January 6th, or not emails, emails and documents from the January 6th investigation by the Democrats last year that they were supposed to turn over to the Republicans when they took over the House with the majority. And instead of turning them over as they were legally required to do, they chose to delete them and said, no, you can't have them. So we'll tell you about what happened there. I've got a great presentation by Dr. Willie Soon, a PhD. He's from the Center for Environmental Research on Earth Sciences, on why the claims of global warming by the UN IPC are all based on false and manipulated data. And we've talked about false and manipulated data, I think, a
Mhm.
couple of weeks ago. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm just going to play the first minute or two so you just get a sense of what he's talking about. We'll tell you which big city mayor, recently elected mayor, has been hospitalized for. You want to guess what he's been hospitalized for?
COVID.
Panic attacks. He's dealing with this influx of illegal immigrants into his city, and apparently the stress is too much. So the guy's been in office about a month and a half, and now he says, "Oh, I need to go to the hospital. I got panic attacks." Um, there's a comedian named Jeff Allen. He tends to be a little on the conservative side, and he's got a great 1 minute routine. And one of the questions he asks, "Would you hire Joe Biden?" And I think it's hilarious. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Oklahoma, where a single woman calls 911 to report a man trying to break into her home. And she's on the phone like for 10 minutes, and this guy's trying to break down the door, and the police are they're on the way, they're on the way, hang on, hang on. Well, they didn't get there soon enough. Remember the old saying, when seconds count, the police are minutes away? This
Yep.
is a classic case of when seconds count, the police are minutes away. And so she winds up defending herself. Anyway, I think we can fit that in. It's not, I cut some of the stuff out because I didn't think we could fit it all in.
I know I've been out of it for a while, but that sounds like an awful lot.
All right. All right. Here's a quote of the week by C.S. Lewis. I'm going to ask if you can relate to this. And he said, one of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to the facts. Can you think of any examples in history where that's happened? Or, can you
I think every day.
every day? And obviously, one of the most obvious one were the citizens of Germany during World War II, during the Holocaust, where they basically shut their eyes to the fact that, thousands of Jews were being, murdered every day in gas chambers and other atrocities. And of course, it goes on today, even among, and it's not just Democrats, but some of the liberals. When you look at some of the stuff going on in this country, people are just, closing their eye. Well, no, that's not really. I didn't hear about that. That's not really happening. That's not as big a problem as people are making it out to be. No, it's a huge problem. And again, one of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to the fact. The fact that we're spending $2 trillion a year more than we're taking in tax revenues, that's unsustainable. And people just shrug and well, not my problem. It's a huge problem, and it will bite all of us in the butt. It's already biting us in the butt, but to close your eyes to the fact that what we're doing is not sustainable is another example of closing your eyes to the facts. Um, Anyway, so here's a story I know you didn't hear in the news because I checked. I Googled this story and I could find no reports outside of California. Now, last year, after the Supreme Court came down and told all these states um, y- that your refusal to issue concealed carry permits is unconstitutional. But prior to that, in states like California or New Jersey, if you tried to get a concealed carry permit, they would just say, don't even bother applying. We don't do that. And typically, it was the sheriffs of each county that were responsible. But as a rule, in places like California, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, you couldn't get a concealed carry. The sheriffs would just routinely say, deny your request. Um, but anyway, so here's a story. A California businessman pleaded guilty in November to bribery charges for agreeing to make $90,000 in payments and political donations in 2020 that benefited the Santa Clara County, California sheriff in exchange for her approval for more than a dozen concealed carry weapon permits that she would normally routinely deny. In agreeing to approve those requests while denying most other requests on the basis of public safety, to me would appear to be the height of hypocrisy. Wouldn't that appear to be the height of hypocrisy to you?
Absolutely.
I mean, if okay,
Absolutely.
well, we don't do that because it endangers public safety. But if you donate $90,000 to my reelection campaign, and it was 45,000 to the campaign and 45,000 to her, yeah, that's okay. We'll give you a dozen concealed carry permits. I just thought that was the height of hypocrisy. Anyway, um, my question is this: do you think that if that was a sheriff in a red state did that, don't you think it would be all over the news?
Oh, absolutely.
Yet that story never made it outside of California.
Uh,
So it always amazes me what the network news feels as newsworthy and what is not newsworthy. So that's just an example of, I believe, of media bias. So if you just Google Santa Clara Sheriff concealed weapons carry permit bribe, you'll find that story. Now, here's another story that just happened the other day. And I've heard some radio reports, but I did watch the morning news and the evening news. I haven't seen this on the news. And if you did see it, I guarantee it's died a very, very quick death outside of the state of Illinois. So it happened yesterday. So there was a Nigerian immigrant who was, where did this? Nigerian immigrant who was out on bond for a previous shooting incident
mm,
with a gun he was not illegally out to own or possess. So he's already been arrested on a felony charge of illegal possession of a weapon and discharge of that weapon. Out on bond, he gets a hold of another gun in Illinois, which it's very, very difficult. And he used that gun to kill 7 people in a mass shooting. And again, with a gun he was not allowed to purchase, own, or possess. And he then fled the state in a car and wound up in Texas 18 hours later, where he was confronted by Texas authority and committed suicide. So my question is, why did that mass shooting story die such a quick death? Well, we'll never really know, but I'm guessing that if the shooter had been a white Christian male using a legally purchased AR-15 rifle, we'd still be hearing
mhm.
about that story for the rest of the week. What do you think?
Absolutely. And the fact that he was already out on a felony
Bond, yeah,
charge.
yeah. He was out on bond for a previous gun-related felony. Um, and I guarantee you, if you heard about this story today, which you probably haven't, I guarantee you do a Google search tomorrow, you will find nothing about this story tomorrow. But again, if it was a white Christian male with a legally purchased AR-15, you'd still be hearing about it all the rest of this week. So that's that story. Now, Here's an interesting one. Mexico last year filed suit against U.S. gun manufacturers. Uh, they were seeking $10 billion in damages
Mhm.
for the deaths of Mexican citizens and Mexican police officials resulting from thugs using guns manufactured by those US-based companies. Now, obviously, it's not the fault of the gun manufacturers. And I don't know if you know this, there's a federal law that was passed in 2005 that said you can't sue gun manufacturers for people who misuse their product. It's called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, or the PLCAA.
Mhm.
Ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have actually.
Yeah, and it's the principle is the same as this. You can't sue for if some drunk driver runs over a family member with a Ford Explorer. You can't sue Ford because somebody misused their legally manufactured product. And by the way, this thing about you can't sue a gun manufacturer, you can if the gun is defective. I mean, if the gun has a defective safety. In fact, Remington was sued because they had some guns where the safety wouldn't work. So gun manufacturers are not immune from all lawsuits. But in 2005, Congress said this is ridiculous. You can't blame the manufacturer because somebody misused their product in a legal manner, and that's been a very, very effective shield. Well, anyway, so the federal court, when they first got the lawsuit, the gun manufacturers filed a motion for dismissal, and the federal court said, "Yeah, absolutely, this is nonsense. They can't sue you," and they dismissed it. Well, uh, Mexico appealed, and they chose which court of appeals they chose to, and they decided to appeal it to the Federal Appeals Court, First District Court, which is based in Boston. And the First Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston overturned and said, "Nope, you can go ahead and sue them," and they sent it back. Now, do you want to guess who appointed the 5 judges to the First Circuit Court of Appeal?
A Democrat.
3 were appointed by Joe Biden, and 2 were appointed by Barack Obama.
Mhm.
So, so I don't know what's going to happen to this suit, whether it will prevail, because it'll be a jury trial. But if the trial in the lower court finds any liability on the part of the manufacturers, they're going to appeal the verdict, because right now, the only thing that was appealed was the dismissal. So the appeals court, again, 5 Democrat appointed judges said, "Yeah, you can go ahead and sue them. We don't
Mhm.
care about the PLCAA congressional act." But I just think there's no, in my mind, I cannot see any legitimate reason for ignoring the 2005 uh, federal law that says you can't sue a gun manufacturer because somebody misused. Now, it's not like the gun manufacturers were illegally shipping guns to Mexico, which they weren't. These guns were being smuggled into Mexico. And in fact, some people have speculated that what was happening is that uh, the Mexican military and Mexican police officials were actually legally ordering so many of these guns, like AR-15 style guns, and that because there's so much corruption in Mexico, that these legally purchased guns were being diverted by Mexican officials to the cartels. I mean, do you think that's far-fetched or just standard practice?
It sounds like it's very far-fetched, but unfortunately, it's probably common practice.
I mean, there's so much corruption in Mexico. I mean, the military, everybody's on the take in Mexico, and to me, it wouldn't be, for somebody in the Mexican military or Mexican police department, to order a dozen AR-15s and then divert that shipment to the
Mhm.
cartels. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if that's how those guns actually got into the hands of the
Yeah.
cartel. But so that's a story we'll be following. It'll probably go through the rest of this year, but yes. So a federal circuit court said, yes, you can sue Mexico, you can sue our gun manufacturers. All right, and here's another story I guarantee you didn't hear on TV, and that's why we call this the situation news and perspective you didn't hear on TV. And here's a quote from a Fox News story. Now, we all remember the January 6th committee, right? That was led by the
Mhm.
Democrats when they had the
Mhm.
majority in the House of Representatives,
Yep.
and they had all these hearings, and anyway, and they it went on for almost 12 months. Anyway, when the 2022 elections were over, Democrats lost the majority, and the Republicans, took over the House, and they took over, therefore, the chairmanship of every committee, including the January 6th committee, which was never disbanded. Well, the new head of the House Select Committee requested all of the documents, related to the case. And there were 4 terabytes of data. And you know what?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And anyway, because there were videos and depositions and everything else. So out of 4 terabytes of data, you know how much data the new chairman of the House Select Committee got?
0.
2 terabytes.
So
Two
half of it.
terabytes. 2 terabytes is later. And what they found, so they then hired a forensic computer expert, and that expert found that not only weren't they turned over, they found out that the former head of the Democrat of the House Committee encrypted and deleted more than 100 files, many of which were internal memos between House members. So my question is, why, if you're the Democrats on the House Committee, why did you think it was necessary, in violation of the rules and regulations, why did you find it necessary to encrypt and delete 2 terabytes worth of data that you were legally obligated to turn over? Any idea?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, let me go on and tell you about what they found. Sources familiar with Representative Loudermilk's investigation told Fox News Digital that, per the House rules, the former Select Committee, which was chaired by Representative Benny Thompson, who was a Democrat from Mississippi, was required to turn over all documents from its investigation to the new GOP-led panel. However, Loudermilk's committee hired a digital forensics team to scrape hard drives to determine what information was not given. The forensics team, according to sources familiar with their search, determined that 117 files were not only deleted, they were both deleted and encrypted. Sources said those files were deleted on January 1st, 2023, just 5 days before the new House Republican majority was sworn in. So 5 days before Republicans took their seats in the House of Representatives, they decided to delete and encrypt 117 files. So now the forensic team has recovered all 117 deleted files, but guess what? They're still encrypted. And so far, the Democrat head of the committee is refusing to turn over the password to unlock those encrypted files. So did you hear about that in the news?
I did not.
Do you think you should have heard about it on the news?
Probably should have.
You should have, but you didn't. So that's the news you didn't hear on TV. All right. Well, it's interesting to see if and when they ever get the passwords to those encrypted files, what's on all those deleted files. Now, you want to move on to global warming?
Yeah.
Now, I think it was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we talked about, I think we played a clip that talked about how
Hmm.
all of these temperature readings were being manipulated and adjusted, and they were using because about 40% of the reporting stations were either inactive or no longer exist. Do you remember having that discussion?
Yep. Yep.
And they were literally fabricating data. Well, yeah, this temperature station was either inaccurate, it wasn't working that day, or it no longer exists because the place where it used to be was torn down or demolished. So we'll just make up data, and we'll tell you what we think that station would have reported had it still been there. And then, of course, we get into these heat islands where a temperature station that might have been out in a hayfield and outside of town is now surrounded by high-rise buildings and blacktop parking lots, and that's called a heat island. So we went through all that. Anyway, this is a 22-minute presentation, which I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it's by Dr. William Soon, PhD. He works for the Center for Environmental Research and Earth Scientists. So this is not some quack. This guy's got more letters. He's got PhD, MS. He's got more freaking degrees I've ever seen. And he's got a very, very heavy accent. But I just want to play you like 1 minute where he starts to tell you why all of these claims by the IPCC, is the UN Committee International Panel on International Panel on Climate. I forget what the other C stands for, but here he is talking about the claims they make and why all the claims they make are nonsense. And here we go, Dr. Soon.
And my name is Willie Soon. I'm a scientist at series-sign.com. Before I start, I want to acknowledge my two colleagues from Ireland, Dr. Ronan and Michael Connolly, for helping me put together this slide set. First thing is about IPCC, obviously, right? They make a lot of claims, but as you can imagine, from 1 to 5, right? Global warming is there, is 1 by 1.5 C or 3 degree Fahrenheit, so on and so forth, and it cannot be explained by the sun, so on and so forth. And then, but the obvious one is basically claiming that the contamination of the thermometer data, let's say by urban heat island effect, is less than 10%. Those things are open to challenge, and you can prove them wrong by just even turn around. I mean, that's how simple it is. And that's why it's embarrassing for IPCC to make that kind of claim. But this is how they try to tell everyone that, you know, if you look at the data set, right, the solid line is the observed temperature record. Never mind what it is, we'll explain later. And then they say that if I were to try to simulate in computer climate model using only volcano and the sun, which is the green lines, well, it won't fit. If we add CO2, it fit. Problem solved. Everything's done, so let's all go home and stop the funding, right?
By the way,
So
that's what it's the International Panel on Climate Change. That's what IPC, and what he just made was a little sarcastic jab. So no. So we couldn't make the data fit, but see, if you add CO2, then the data fits. So therefore it's caused by CO2. So let's all go home and start the funding. In other words, it's all about the money, right? So I'm going to back that up so you can hear him say that again. That because he's being sarcastically summarizing what the IPCC is saying. Here we go again.
Climate model using only volcano and the sun, which is the green lines, well, it won't fit. If we add CO2, it fit. Problem solved. Everything's done, so let's all go home and stop the funding, right? So I'm going to talk about this subject matter. It's quite a lot to cover in 20 minutes, obviously, but then I hope you understand that you don't have to rush, and somehow the website doesn't appear, but please, you can get all the slide at series-sign.com/post/ICCC15.
And for people who want to hear the whole thing or see his slides, it's www.ceres-science.com/post/ICCC15. And producer Susan, could you put this
Or I was going to say, or I could just put it up on the website.
put up on the website? So if you're listening, didn't want to write that down, you're in your car, producer Susan's going to put a link to this video up on the website. I only play about another 60 seconds of this.
Okay, and we will actually speak about all these issues and clearly shows that IPCC is beyond, good standard of science. The first stage is I want to talk about the history of how global land temperature is constructed. There are 6 stages. The first stage is basically the simple stage from Vladimir Köppen and Edward Bruckner and even Homer Clue from U.S. Weather Service.
And by the way, he's going back to 1873. Those 3 people, 1873, 1889, and 1920. Those are the dates of the papers published by those 3 people he's citing.
Asking a very simple question: does the globe, the climate change? I mean, the answer is obvious. Climate does changes, right? And then second stage is very clear, is in 1930s to 1940s. There are folks like Joseph Kinser, actually also from US Weather Service. They clearly started to collect all this data worldwide based on the Smithsonian weather records. And they found that, the globe seems to be warming. And then there are guys from England named Guy Callender. By the way, he's Canadian also. And he realized that, wow, this could be all blamed by rising of carbon dioxide. And then the third stage, which is 1940 to 1970s, right? Global cooling, basically. They realized that the warming that they observed earlier didn't continue. The globe appears to be cooling slightly, right?
So, and what he's now saying, this is before your time, but I remember 1970 global cooling, there's going to be winter. We're all going to freeze to death. I don't know if you remember reading stories about that, but global cooling. Anyway, so he's going back and he's giving it's a wonderful presentation, fact-based. He's got rock solid evidence for every single thing he's saying. It's a wonderful presentation. So if you ever needed convincing and facts as to why these scare tactics about the IPCC is manipulating data, this is the presentation that will do it for you. So if you're bored someday or you're in your car and you got a 20-minute drive, his accent's a little hard. I urge you to either watch the video or look at the slide set. I think watching the video, because you'll see the slides and he talks and explains each slide to you. So I would urge you to watch the video
Mhm.
and have him walk you through each slide. So what do you think of, you think this guy's got any credibility?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Mm.
So I just mentioned that as a teaser when we started, one of our mayors, newly elected mayors, has been hospitalized with panic attacks. You
Mhm.
want to guess what city it is?
Chicago.
Chicago. Now the guy's he's been a mayor for like 90 days or less. Anyway, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is stressed out and has been admitted to a hospital for panic attacks. And that's according to veteran Chicago journalist John Cash, who discussed Johnson's panic attack on the episode of WGN's Chicago Way podcast. No amount of antidepressants can cure him of Chicago's illegal alien problem.
Mhm.
Padilla said Johnson has sought out professional medical help for, quote, stress.
Mm.
Two sources told me he has been in the hospital for these panic attacks. He is stressed out. This is a big, big job for him. He's not ready for it. He's not a leader. I'm sorry, but the immigration issue is not helping him at all. So what do you think of the mayor just basically crumbling under the stress of illegal immigration in his city?
If I was the mayor of Chicago, I'd be stressed
Yeah.
too.
All right. You ready for a little humor?
Yeah.
All right, here's comedian Jeff Allen. It's only how much time we got left?
I got about 7 minutes.
All right, I'll do 2 minutes. Jeff Allen.
President speak, Joe, and about 4 minutes into his talk, I paused the TV. Tammy goes, "What?" I said, "Is it me or does our president look like he'd be a lot happier watching Gunsmoke and eating ice cream?" I did that joke in South Carolina, and a woman sends me a page-and-a-half email. She was upset because I was picking on our president. He's just trying to save the free world. Made me laugh too. So anyway, I read the whole thing. I sent her a short email back. I said, "Look, I normally don't reply, but I said, I got one question for you. You don't even have to reply to me. Just answer the question honestly to yourself. If you owned a Starbucks, would you let Joe Biden work your register?"
I'll end it there. So if you owned a Starbucks, producer Susan, if you owned a Starbucks franchise, would you let Joe Biden work your cash register?
Absolutely not.
And it
Yeah,
goes on.
I'd let him be like the front door greeter.
And if you can put this, it only goes on for another 30 seconds, but I think it's the most, I mean, that I think is the question when you're saying who to vote for. Would you vote for a guy for the president, for job of president of the United States if you wouldn't hire him to work the cash register at your Starbucks?
Yeah.
I mean, could it be a simpler decision than that?
I mean, budget and finances is a huge job of the presidency.
And whether or not to launch a nuclear,
Yeah.
you can authorize a nuclear strike, right? And if you're not going to if you wouldn't hire the guy to work the cash register, would you give him the responsibility for deciding whether or not to launch a nuclear strike?
Yeah.
No. All right. So our taxpayer relief shot, we call them taxpayer relief shots. I will let the sheriff of Santa Rosa, County, Florida, explain why we call them a taxpayer relief shot. Here we go.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And that pretty much, again, we talk everything. If you arrest a thug and he goes to jail for 10 years, it costs the taxpayers $1 million. So here's a woman in Oklahoma. She hears somebody trying to break in her house. Her doors are locked, and this guy's trying to, going around the house, rattling door handles, trying to get in. So she calls 911 like she should. But she's out in the country, and the dispatcher says, "Well, they're on the way, ma'am. They're on the way, ma'am." Listen to this poor woman and the decision she has to make. Here we go.
This story, a homeowner's worst nightmare, especially if you live alone. Someone breaks into your house while you're there. It happened to a woman in Oklahoma last week, and as we hear in this dramatic 911 call, she took matters into her own hands.
No, they need to hurry. He's going to break this thing open. And he does. I have to kill him. I don't want to kill him.
That's the voice of 57-year-old Donna Jackson, reacting to an intruder breaking into her home in rural Oklahoma.
Okay, and you have a gun? Yeah, I guess I do. I do not have it out. Okay. Just I want you to say it and I will use it.
Jackson called 911 and for more than 10 minutes pleaded for help.
He's still here. Yeah, I can hear him banging. Can you understand what he's saying at all?
And by the way, that's the dispatcher saying to the woman, yes, I can hear him banging. That's the dispatcher telling the woman, yes, I can hear him banging on your door. And she's on the phone for 10 minutes.
Crazy. He's crazy. I can hear him yell.
Scared and alone, Jackson took out a shotgun. Dispatchers informed her of her rights.
Okay, County 13 is advising that you can defend your property if you need to. I don't want to have to kill this man, but I'll kill him graveyard dead man. I understand. All right.
Eventually, the suspect, Billy Riley, used a chair and a patio table to break into the house.
Turned off all the lights in here. Oh crap, he's breaking in. He's breaking in now. He's breaking in now. He's breaking in. Gun on him.
Still, Jackson was reluctant to shoot.
He's an older man. I don't want to kill him. I understand, ma'am. He's taking the door. Please hurry up.
But a few minutes later, her worst fears came true.
Oh, he's got it. He's out of here, ma'am. I'm putting him down. She hung up on me. He came through the window. He came through the door. He threw a chair through the door.
And 1 minute later, there were shots.
Dear God, hurry. Okay, not yet. Hurry. Can you, is your, oh my God. I shot him going out front. I hit him. Hey, God, God, help me. Oh, please, dear God, I think I killed him. Please, Father, him. Please, Father.
The suspect.
You hear the woman saying, please, Father, and I think I killed him. Please, Father in heaven.
Yep.
She's not at all happy about this. She's
Of course not.
she's frightened and she's remorseful, but you know, just backed it up just 10 seconds here. Here we go.
Think I killed him. Please, Father, him. Please, Father.
The suspect was killed. The only thing Jackson was left with was anguish.
Oh, ma'am, I killed him. It's okay, ma'am. It's okay. Yes, no, but I killed him. Okay.
So, producer Susan, what do you think of that poor woman's ordeal?
Yeah, I feel like I've sent you very similar clips to that story. It happens all too often.
Yeah, single woman. She's 57 years old. She's living out in the country by herself.
Mhm.
She's on the phone for 10 minutes and the police still haven't been able to get to her in time. So at the end of the day, you are the person who is primarily responsible for your own safety.
Mhm.
All right. Before we wrap up, anything you'd like to add?
Oh, is that it? Did we possibly go through all of your agenda?
We did. And how much time we got left?
Oh, you still got a few minutes left.
All right. Well, anyway, I had more I could have talked about, but I just will wrap it up a minute or two early. Anyway, I want to thank all of you who listen to listen to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found those topics as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen in the weeks and months to come. Producer Susan will put up links to some of the stories we talked about. And I urge you to go look at the video about the global warming. And what we had another, and the Fox News story about the missing documents. So they'll all be up on the website when producer Susan is feeling better.
Yep.
And other than that, producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Did you finally get some snow? We actually had 2 snow days last week.
We got 3 inches. Anyway, we had 3 inches. So
we got a little bit more than you.
All right. I expected you did. All right. Well, if you got nothing else, we will wrap up and I will talk to you next week. Hope you're feeling 100% by next week. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.